The latest scandal in Washington, and there'll probably be another one, I don't know, tomorrow or next week, but there's scandals all the time. The latest one is a Signal chat. This is a private communication app, uses some degree of security. This one included Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. They were having discussions on, getting clearance to launch attacks on the Houthi terrorists. And it turned out that the media, The Atlantic, just published a story on it. An investigation started. How did The Atlantic get this story? Who leaked it? And then the head of the company actually published online saying that someone inadvertently added him to the chat. Now, Mike Waltz has come out and taken full responsibility for it, saying that he was the one who added The Atlantic to it. And there's now an investigation into that. But the incident has now turned into a debate on, well, are these secure communications? Was a law broken? Well, we'll find out. But what's being left out of the discussion is something very important. I'd say Signal, this private, communication app, it is actually approved for government and even some military communications. It comes pre-installed on their devices, and they're actually told to use it. This is where things are at currently. We'll start from the top. Epoch Times said this: President Donald Trump on Tuesday defended National Security Advisor Mike Waltz after the Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg was added to a Signal chat with other high-level administration officials. Trump said he still backs Waltz. He's not backing off from that. A former Republican congressman, as some House Democrats suggested that administration officials be fired over the incident. Maybe also people who have private servers and things like that. I don't know. I'm just saying, right? But in response to questions about Waltz's status inside the White House, Trump told NBC News in a phone interview on Tuesday that Michael Waltz has learned a lesson, and he's a good man, adding that Goldberg's presence in the chat had no impact at all. Now it says, when asked how Goldberg was added to the chat, Trump said, "It was one of Michael's people on the phone. A staffer had his number on there." And so that's how a mistake happened. Now, notice that Trump also said he is confident in his staff and team, saying that Goldberg's addition to the chat was the only glitch in 2 months, and it turned out to not be a serious one. Now, some Democrats, it says, suggested that administration officials should be punished or fired. And they're making a big scandal out of this, actually, trying to target them. Now, there's a debate in Congress over this. Top intelligence officials with the Trump administration, they were testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Tuesday. And, this was not technically about the Signal chat, but it turned into a conversation about the Signal chat. Criticisms of this were mainly along partisan lines. It was mostly the Democrats grilling these officials over the Signal chat. And the media was, of course, using that to publish stories. But while it's become a new political scandal, well, it does not seem this will lead to Trump officials actually being punished or fired, if you give my take on it. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson came out in defense of the officials on the chat, saying they should not face any kind of discipline for it. But on a more serious end, there is the debate of, well, could this have led to government secrets being leaked to countries like Russia or China? Questions were going into, how government employees were using Signal as their go-to place for private conversations. And that opened up a whole other big topic. Because guess what? The elephant in the room, folks, I'm saying it here, Signal is approved for government communications. There's no scandal here. Signal is even encouraged. It comes pre-installed on their phones. It's even approved for some military communications. Now they're investigating it now. Now they're putting out alerts on it. But going back to 2017, this has been normal and encouraged. CIA Director John Ratcliffe said that Signal comes loaded on government work devices, and it is an approved tool for government communications. He made these statements yesterday during a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing on the worldwide threats. Watch this.
So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was Signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Ratcliffe.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels.
Now, the irony with this congressional hearing and the debates we're now seeing on this is that, look, most members of Congress, I'd guarantee most people sitting there, they very likely know Signal is approved for government communications. And why is that? Why would they possibly know? It's because the U.S. Senate approved Signal for staff communications back in 2017. They actually approved it. Back to 2017, I guarantee some of those same individuals even voted for it. And Signal is even authorized for use of the U.S. military. In fact, in 2020, deployed U.S. troops, meaning they're deployed, they were told they could use Signal on their government cell phones as a way to communicate while on deployment, not even like stateside. Now, the legacy media also likely knows this as well. In fact, during Trump's first term in office, it was revealed government employees in the Trump administration, other people around him, were using Signal to have communications outside the review of Trump and his administration. In 2017, in fact, Vanity Fair even detailed how government employees were using Signal to communicate, and they were actually applauding it like trained SEALs, saying, look at these government officials bypassing Donald Trump to facilitate government leaks. Why was this praised back in 2017 but criticized now? Vanity Fair said this. This is their exact article, 2017, quote, more than a month into his presidency, Donald Trump is still struggling to staunch the constant flow of leaks emanating from his White House. Even attempts to crack down on the leaks have predictably leaked. Last week, Politico reported Sunday, while House Press Secretary Sean Spicer decided to conduct a surprise phone check on his staff after information that was discussed in a closed-door planning meeting with a dozen of his staffers made its way to the press. And it said this, quote, the rising tide of panic among both leakers and leak hunters within the White House has apparently led to something of a technological arms race, as many within Trump world turn to encrypted messaging apps to communicate with reporters and with each other, incognito. It says WhatsApp, Wicker, Signal. Wicker is very similar to Signal. It has an automatic delete function as well, as do these apps, and they're encrypted, meaning you can't just break into them. And Confide, another one, are just some of the more popular programs that have recently begun to become more mainstream as people seek out ways to keep their conversations private. They may also violate the Presidential Records Act, they said, as Spicer warned his team last week. The Trump administration on the other side of this, according to multiple sources in the room. Get that? Multiple sources in the room. This is a leaked article about leaks happening within the Trump administration about concerns of leaks. Now look, again, Signal was later approved. The Senate literally approved it. The military approved it. It was approved for government communications, pre-installed in their devices. But now they're making a scandal over something that many of them themselves probably approved. But this is also reading, some debates on whether government agencies should have dedicated tools for the communications. Should they have to develop something internally that's not downloadable on an app store like Signal is? Should they have their own government app that, journalists at random media can't download and then accidentally get added to on a government chat? That's the big question, right? Now, what's being left out of the discussion also, though, Signal was built with some U.S. government involvement. Again, I'm a former national security reporter and cybersecurity reporter, and the same organization that oversees a lot of government media, including, for example, Voice of America, had some involvement in the early stages of the development of Signal. Not being discussed, by the way. Now, on this point also, though, both Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe said that no classified material was shared on this Signal chat, now the focus of this whole scandal, but both were still questioned pretty strongly on this. Watch this.
So my communications, to be clear, in a Signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
Director Gabbard, you are the security executive and set access guidelines for classified information. Did you contact the defense secretary or others after this specific military planning was put out and say, hey, we should be doing this in a SCIF?
There was no classified material that was shared in that
So then
signal
if there was no
check.
classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security. Bobbing and weaving and trying to, filibuster your answer.
Now, look, my personal take on this, there's two sides to it. On one side, there's a false debate happening over, can they use Signal for government communications? I guarantee most of the people out there, the journalists, the members of Senate, they know this is approved. Again, the Senate approved it for their own communications back in 2017. They know this. What is the big actual, I think, scandal here, though, is that a journalist was added to a private chat that was discussing national security matters. That actually is a scandal. That is a big deal. And on that, I do assume there's going to be real investigations on that. The important side is this is not like a leak because they say there's no classified information. The chats themselves were not revealing like, insider baseball type stuff. Going to be investigated probably as well, but still debatable. The big scandal, though, is, well, who on Matt Waltz's team added this journalist? Why did they add it? Was it done intentionally? What was the intent? There very likely could be a scandal there, and I do think that will be the focus of some of the ongoing investigations. And maybe there's going to be some kind of changes to format of how they or protocol of how they actually run these chats. If you're going to have national security decisions being made, maybe read the names of who's on the chat first. Just saying, right? Maybe there's going to be some requirements on that. I do think that, frankly, this is probably the least damaging way this could have gone down. And, if you're a journalist on these chats, well, maybe you should have kept your head down a bit longer till you got something a bit juicier, just saying. But the fact that this got kind of released and exposed so early on actually probably is a good thing because it doesn't happen in the long term. Long term, this could have been a much bigger problem. But now there's probably going to be some investigations into it, and some of those loopholes will probably be closed. Now, in my opinion, this is controversy for controversy's sake, at least when it comes to why is Signal on government phones. Again, Signal is approved and used for government communications, and even for some military communications, and actually even in the intelligence community, it's approved for communications. Not like, spies on the ground, but for a lot of the other communications, it is approved communication. Now, it's been going on like this for a long time. This goes back very far. That whole side, as far as I'm concerned, it's a false debate. But there is a scandal, and the actual scandal is, again, how did a journalist get added to a private chat of this nature? That actually is pretty serious.